something strange was happening in Atlantic Canada. For decades, pieces of art, large and small, would simply disappear. In all, several thousand of them. As you're about to see, it is quite the tale.
Anything old, anything with character, anything that had nice patina to it, anything that was rich in look, or that could have been held by a famous person or owned by them.
Over time, one by one, they would then mysteriously reappear at this house outside Halifax. Inside, the bounty of art and antiquity amassed over a quarter of a century by a most unusual art collector. His name is John Mark Tillman.
This is my house at Miller Lake.
He presents himself as a person of wealth and taste.
There's my BMW and my 1989 Porsche 911.
And to prove it, he recorded this video tour of his waterfront home and possessions.
The Origin Species, first edition. That book should be worth between $100,000 and $200,000.
He said, you know, when people come into my house, they say it's like a museum. Of course it was a museum, it just wasn't his museum.
That's right. John Tillman's entire collection was stolen property. Thousands of artifacts from throughout the Maritimes. From museums, libraries, antique stores, making him one of the most prolific art thieves ever in Canada.
Nice to meet you, John.
And he's not shy about that. John Tillman agreed to sit down with us, on camera for the first time, to talk about his life of art and crime.
If I really liked something, I kept it.
He claims that the larceny began back in elementary school, when he routinely went to class, carrying a large wad of cash.
That was acquired through saving, wheeling, dealing, stealing, whatever I had to do to get it. But I always had money. And for a kid back then, you know, having a few grand would be the equivalent now of having, I guess, something 10 times that amount.
So how old would you have been when you had a few $1,000s?
I'd be around anywhere from 9 to 12 years old. Yeah.
He says that by his 20s, he had graduated to art appreciation and started to assemble his collection, stealing it piece by piece.
The whole game when you're stealing on a scale like that is to use deception.
And Tillman was also constructing his own personal myth, styling himself as a kind of Canadian Pink Panther, a crafty burglar meticulously planning what he called his missions, like the theft of an almost 200-year-old watercolor from the Nova Scotia legislature in downtown Halifax. That picture was done in 1819, then displayed here at the Legislative Library, until one day it simply disappeared.
This is one of my more favorite heists because it employed my mother, and it went very well. What we did is we dressed up as maintenance people on that day with overalls, caps, names on our jackets, and we also had radios in those days clipped on our belts.
Yeah.
So we had a van outside that we rented for the occasion, and a telescopic ladder type device, and we went in and we pretended to be maintenance people.
According to Tillman, he entered the library, using the ladder to get up to the picture, his mother on the radio. He says their disguise was so convincing that a member of the provincial legislature courteously held the door open on their way out.
And I thanked him and he wished us a good day. Ordinary people can be made to believe the most absurd of situations given the right props, the right confidence, the right look, the right acting.
As he tells it now, every one of his so-called missions had its own M.O., and evidently nothing was sacred to him. He stole one painting from St. Mary's Basilica in Halifax, right out of the priest's residence. And it was while he was a student at Mount St. Vincent University that Tillman says he resolved to one day return for the precious first edition of Charles Darwin's Origin of the Species that the college kept locked under glass.
I made a mental note, I recall back then even, that someday I'd come back and liberate it. Forgive me for the language, but I'd come back and liberate it for myself.
Tillman did, in fact, steal that Darwin book, and more than 30 others from his former school's collection. And he got increasingly brazen about his crimes, by 2008 boldly inviting a Halifax newspaper to feature his house and its contents in the paper's home decor section.
They photographed items which were stolen.
They did.
And weren't you just asking for it?
I guess one could say that I was, but again, I think that was part of the thrill, part of the adrenaline rush that I would get. I would get an adrenaline rush. I'm not going to deny that. And I guess at the end there, I got a little cocky.
So everything is 10-2.
And his cockiness was about to become his downfall. Tillman was on the police radar, not for art theft, but for a long list of other criminal convictions. One day, Halifax Police Constable Kristen Bradley spotted him driving his BMW, pulled him over, and saw something suspicious in the front seat.
I wasn't sure exactly what it was. I just knew it was an old letter, and it was very hard to read, but down at the bottom, General James Wolfe was the signer. And I said, General James Wolfe, Plains of Abraham, like, this is old, 1758. I mean, it's 250-some years old.
That letter in Tillman's car was written by the legendary British General James Wolfe about the impending battle with the French, a Canadian historical document of the First Order. When the police discovered the letter had been stolen from Dalhousie University, the RCMP took over the case. And when the Mounties saw a copy of Tillman's boastful home video,
There's a view of the front of the house.
his self-aggrandizing became self-incrimination. In January 2013, the police arrived at Tillman's door with warrants to search the house and arrest him. One of them was RCMP Constable Daryl Morgan.
We felt that we had somewhere in the area of 10,000 exhibits.
10,000.
10,000.
By the time investigators finally located his motherlode, he was a wealthy man. The waterfront home mortgage-free, with hundreds of thousands in cash in the bank.
We left a few cabinets behind and a bed, but for the most part, anything that was antique that was on display in the house was subject to seizure.
And the police soon realized they were not dealing with a run-of-the-mill fella.
He's a kleptomaniac with taste. He had the urge to steal, and you could see that the way the things were set up around his house, it was a reflection for him to look back on those particular things that he took.
Officers spent days photographing and cataloging thousands of individual artifacts, then trying to locate their rightful owners, which incredibly, for the most part, with some help from Tillman, they did. Among the items returned, that watercolor stolen from the Nova Scotia legislature, found hanging on John Tillman's wall, and on its back, a sticker proclaiming it belonged to the Tillman collection.
In many ways, Mr. Tillman's home seemed to be an altar that he had built, where he seemed to revel in his exploits.
Crown Prosecutor Mark Tillmann.
It quickly became apparent that really Mr. Tillman's entire existence was dependent on these stolen items. Couldn't find any legitimate employment, any legitimate income source, but yet we knew Mr. Tillman was quite wealthy.
How much of this was the money? And how much of it was that sense of getting away with something?
If I'm to be honest about it, I mean, probably equal portions. I don't know. I mean, I loved the stuff I was dealing with, and I loved owning it, and I loved handling it and selling it. And of course, I loved the money part of it and the lifestyle that the money brought.
Today, it is clear that John Tillman wants to be seen as a kind of evil genius, the stuff of books and movies.
You understand that you've been arrested for possession of stolen property.
And with Daryl Morgan of the RCMP as his nemesis.
He's Sherlock Holmes, and I'm James Moriarty. And that's the relationship that always is when police deal with a criminal.
You've got quite the collection.
It's a love-hate thing with them, with me, right? Because let's face it, their job is to catch me. And my job, which it was, is to evade their capture.
Yeah, you know what? Your place is like walking into a museum. I was impressed. You cataloged a lot of stuff, you dated it.
Is it psychological? Is it pathological? Is it anti-establishment anger? What is it?
I think you've got them all covered. I think that you have to check off every one of those boxes.
But there's an even darker side to the Tillman story.
There's a picture of the great man, one of the greatest men in history.
The police turned up evidence of his admiration for Adolf Hitler and his support of white supremacist politics, which he doesn't deny.
I stand by that. I stand by that today, right in front of you.
John Tillman pleaded guilty to 40 charges, including theft and fraud. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison and ordered to forfeit his house, his cars, and over $300,000 in cash in the bank.
Is it fair to say you are, as you sit here today, unapologetic about all of it? Hitler, the 40 charges of theft and fraud to which you pled guilty.
Well, there's certain aspects of my life, had I things to do over again, I certainly would do things differently. Do I come here today to do this interview to issue an apology or to grovel? No. I paid my price to society. So that was
now on day parole, Tillman told us he can't promise he'll keep out of trouble forever, only that he'll stay out of the art business.
I don't intend to pursue my former career in any way, shape, or form. That's over. And I'm smart enough to realize that. The jig is up when it comes to artifacts thefts for me.